Meetings come to order. Disorder. We are in the process of trying to set up a different optical system, a projector for the people here so they can watch the presenters. And in the meantime, I will tell you the little bit of news we have. We have a pending new webmaster. David Douglas said that he would take over the helm, and I've seen some emails and he seems to think that it shouldn't be a problem for him. So we'll get that up and running and get back up to speed, get the rest of the Zoom meetings loaded, get the stuff on the first page corrected, which will include that the Messier Marathon is on for the weekend of the 26th. And the portalettes are already on order, so eat all the vegetables you want to. Hold back on the cheese. And drink all the beer you want during the daytime. So, yeah, we're looking good for that. Unfortunately, it's at the antenna site. Okay, here's something else about the antenna site. If you've not been there and spent a lot of time there, it's kind of rocky. The nice thing about the airport runways was that it's nice and flat and pretty smooth, level. Yeah, the antenna site isn't any of those things. No, it's actually fairly level when you're at your spot. It doesn't have a huge slope to it, but it is kind of rocky. There, you've got to be careful walking at nighttime that you don't twist an ankle. And then the other thing that I have checked with the FFA/FCC about is one of the antennas has a daytime strobe white light, if you've been following it on my discussions, that blinks at nighttime, and it is bright. It will cast a shadow. Turn your back to it and you'll see it flash off of everything in front of you. So if you're going to be doing any astrophotography, make sure it's all to the south.
Hey, Tom?
Yes.
What was the date again?
It is the weekend of the 26th. Saturday, the 26th will be the marathon. Weather pending.
March.
Of March, yes. In 2 weekends, yes. Not this weekend or next weekend, but the following weekend. Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, we'll get this going hopefully, and we'll be jamming.
Alrighty.
So we've got a ton of stuff to raffle off. One of the things happens to be serendipitous that our guest speaker, Kevin Schindler from Lowell Observatory, the Public Information Officer, will be talking about. He's going to speak about Robert Burnham Jr. and his life and times, and the 3-volume observing guides that he put together. We have those for the raffle, along with a whole bunch of other stuff, a lot of books this year. So I've been reading through them since I got that's nice when you're the president, you get to do that. So still working on the overhead projector for the people here. I can turn this around, but I guess I don't know. If everybody's really quiet, you may be able to hear the speakers. Are you telling me to be quiet?
No.
Oh.
I don't have the login.
Oh, well, you can't connect it to this?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, go ahead and connect it to this, because this isn't working on the other. Okay, you guys out in electronic land, take a short break. We're going to still working on the projector here for the meeting. This may be a shorter meeting than we thought.
Tom?
Yes.
It's possible the sound problem is because
See, that's the problem. You're plugged into my.
the voices from these remote sites are going to be picked up by your
Paul.
microphone and probably cause a lot of feedback.
Hang on, Paul. We can't hear you. We're. No, it might be when, this is the only plug-in for the speakers is into the headphones. And when you plug it into the headphones,
It shuts down.
it shuts down the microphone evidently.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's not working either. So it's our system. At least we'll be able to see you all and read lips, and maybe they can hear from my laptop volume. Unfortunately, I can't get my laptop volume any higher than it is. So, Paul, did you want to present a little bit about your ATM meeting?
Yeah, well, like I said, I have this video presentation and the video has no audio, so I was counting on being able to narrate it. The thing is 4.5, it's only 4.5 minutes long, and perhaps you can get enough out of the video itself and then ask questions later. But the first part,
Here.
you will see me talking without any, oops, hello. You'll see me talking without any audio. So if you want me to try to share screen and start that, I can try to do that now.
Yeah, go ahead and do that. We have you on the big screen, and this is a small enough room that the people can hear you if the rest of us shut our pie holes.
Okay. Well, where's my, oh yeah, here we go. I want to share this one. And okay, here's the screen, and I will start this going. First, Tom, can you hear me at all?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, a little bit of background on this is that this is about working with a 6-inch mirror. And when I use the word mirror, I'm referring to an unaluminized piece of glass that's been fully ground and polished. So this is a fully ground and polished spherical mirror with a 30-inch focal length. And it's an accurate sphere. And the idea of this very short video is to show the steps involved in getting there. So let me start this now and see. Let me know if you can hear me okay, or if you can see the video okay.
We see it. Looks good. And we can hear you.
You can hear me,
Yes.
or okay. So here's our little chalk talk just before we started actually parabolizing that mirror. And I think I could probably skip by some of this and maybe go to the next slide. Oops, doesn't seem to be happening.
Yeah.
Okay, so at this point, I'm going to talk a little bit about some strokes. And here's an example of using a small lamp to deepen the center of the mirror. Remember, it starts out spherical, and we like to change it to a parabola. And there's more than one way to do that. One is to deepen the center, which is actually not what we're going to do in the end here. But with this small lamp, and again, this is a pitch lamp, an optical pitch used with cerium oxide polishing compound. And this is an example of how you would work the center more than the edges by working in from different directions. Next, we will talk about how Matt Lutenin used a long W stroke with the mirror on top of the lap. In this first case here, the little small lap was on top. Here's a full-size mirror on top of the full-size lap, and Matt's going to parabolize using a long W stroke, which will both work the edge somewhat and deepen the center. So here's Matt, and you can see he's going over to his right side there with a W, and now working over to his left side. And I'm going to repeat this so that it's so short. Okay, Matt, start it again. All right, here he goes. Fairly long strokes on the pitch lap, over to his right to deepen the center, and now over to his left, also to deepen the center. So that's the standard parabolizing stroke that people use when parabolizing a mirror. Now here I have a little, another 20-second or so thing of Joe Goss doing the same thing. Again, you see the mirror on top of the pitch lap and the whitish polishing compound in between. We did this for about a half an hour, and actually just guessing. Here's the Foucault test. There's a pinhole light source here, and this is the knife edge. A person would position his eye right behind here and advance the tester either left to right or forward and back. So here's a picture taken of the same mirror. This thing in front is called a Everest pin stick. It's a stick with pins in it at distances which are then plugged into an equation, and you try to match up the shadows like here on the left and on the right. The results of that, entering a bunch of numbers into a program, results were for this mirror that it was already a quarter wave peak error, and actually a 13.9th wave RMS. So we kind of decided that even though it looks here like it's a little bit under corrected, that we might just leave it. So that's the whole thing. And I will stop the screen share there. Tom, are you there?
Yes, we're here. It's just dark. I turned the lights
Oh.
down so they could see the TV better. Actually, we're looking at a black hole on our screen there. Wait a second.
I think it's an alien
No,
spaceship.
those are binaries. I'm sure those are binary. Oh, wait a second. There was something in the. Oh, that's just creepy. Talk about alien. So how close could you guys grind that if you wanted to without running over and ruining it? You're down to like a 1/13th error. What's acceptable?
Well, it's acceptable right now because that's the image plane wavefront error, and if it's better than a quarter wave, it's really diffraction limited. You can get it more accurate. About 20 nanometers is probably the best you can get, and I think right now the mirror's at 50 some nanometers.
Oh, cool.
Again, this process is changing that sphere by only nanometers. It's taking extremely small amount of glass off the surface, very little.
Cool. Very good. Thank
I
you.
like that light.
Appreciate it. What?
I like that light.
Oh, okay. We're experimenting with the lighting around here too. It's becoming very romantic. I wouldn't think so. Okay. Hey, you two in the back. Knock it off. Let's see. Mr. Rotrammel, would you like to say anything for the newsletter?
Well, I'd like to know how many are in attendance there?
16.
16.
Okay,
That's not bad. We have 12 zooming in.
Are we both taking the minutes, Rick?
yeah,
Okay, that'll work.
Okay. Let's see. Anybody in the treasurer's report? Hang on a second. Jack wants to give a treasurer's report.
Oh, no. You do it on camera.
On camera.
I'm just gonna yell it from the back.
This is being recorded.
The treasurer's report for March 11th, 2022. Saguaro Astronomy Club. Our balance at Chase Bank is $3,542.74 as of March 1st. Cash on hand, $81. That's about it. I'm just starting this month with the treasurer's report, a few months delayed due to other technicalities, bank technicalities. Up front, we have some observers handbooks. They are free, first come, first served. Must be present to get one. And you can attack them at the break. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We're still looking for a vice president. We're not really looking for him. It's not that he's disappeared. It's just we don't have one. Same thing with full-time secretary. And Paul, by the way, what are you still looking for your telescope? A focuser, 2-inch focuser?
I think so, yes.
You think so? I don't know.
Well,
The
well, we
question-
could use a low profile 2-inch focuser. We have a rather monstrous one.
Okay, yeah, I gave them to you. Okay, let's see. Any comments, anything that anybody in the crowd here needs to bring up? Okay,
Well, I got a question.
okay.
Do you find out who has control of that red, white light there at the antenna site?
The question has come up about the red light at the antenna site. Earlier in the meeting, I mentioned that, yes, there's a sign on the gate for the particular antenna. That's the offending one. Doesn't shut off or switch from white light to red light at night. And I've contacted the FCC, FAA, and they have said that, yeah, they already know about it. And the owner said that they're trying to get the part for it. And somebody made a comment online that, yeah, red lights are made in the United States, white lights are made in China. Or no, vice versa. Red lights are made in China. The white lights are made here in the US. So they're trying to get something from China, evidently. Or maybe they're made in Russia. I don't know. Or you said that?
They're red.
Okay,
That was a
red.
joke.
It was a joke. I thought maybe it was, and you don't know. It could be true.
It could be
So-
true, but it's also a joke.
So I don't know if anybody in the background's hearing this kibitzing that's going on with these
Light comes
guys.
from the US.
So, okay. I tell you what,
Yeah, and Tom,
yes,
real quick on the Mezzier Marathon. So there will be facilities there. And what about for like food and drink? Are we packing it in ourselves?
yes, food and drink. We've decided this year we're not going to try to feed. We're not sure yet. We're lucky just to have the portalets arranged at greater expense than they ever been in the past. And I'm hoping there won't be a surcharge based upon the price of fuels that are going up recently.
Better not be.
I've been talking with them, already have a contract, and it was bad enough the first time. So yes, we will have 2 portalets and a hand wash station, but bring your own beer and cheese. So we can do that. Let's see. Trying to think of outreach events we've got a former member, Bill King, if any of you remember him. He was a member some time ago. He is now at the Bella Vita nursing home and has tuned in to some of these. I've been over helping him work on his 10-inch Dob, which was in dire need of some repairs. But we've got it now that he can go out in his wheelchair and actually use it. So I'm going out hopefully Tuesday evening and maybe putting on a little outreach for some of the people there. So if anybody wants to show up and participate, once I've got it confirmed that it'll be Tuesday evening, then Tuesday or Thursday are the only evenings I can do it. So, but yeah, Bill's pretty fun to play around with his Dob with, and he appreciates it. And the people there, they've looked through my 8-inch Mead, so they enjoy it. The staff there, I think, enjoy it more than the people there, which is so, oh wow, it's just the moon. Yes, but look how close it is. But it's a lot of fun. I mean, all you guys know that who've been to outreach events knows it's just a lot of fun. And it's like Kevin, I'm sure, has done like a gazillion outreaches. And as a matter of fact, Lowell Observatory is doing their Messier Marathon this evening. So I would have tuned into that had we not had this. And if somebody wants to take over right now, I'll go and watch it myself. But so it'd be nice. And next Friday, I don't know if Kevin was going to mention it, but there's a thing at the Paradise Valley Golf Club.
You can do the Messier Marathon online?
They're doing it online. Have you not tuned in to some of their star parties? Oh, it's really cool. They use some of their nice big telescopes, and you can type in YouTube if you're logged in what you want to look at, and they'll actually go to it. And I've done that several times. It's a lot of fun. They'll show you all sorts of things but they're the first to tell you, nope, sorry, it's below the trees, or nope, it's behind the building, or it's not up yet. So it's
Lowell.
Lowell, Lowell, Flagstaff. You know, you've heard of that, haven't you?
Okay.
Lowell?
Yeah.
That's Jack, in case you haven't heard from the kibitzing.
Popping up.
But right now, I tell you what, we will turn it over to Kevin Schindler. Yeah.
Is he there? Yeah.
Yes, he is here. He was just back rubbing his temples, wondering, oh, what did he get himself into? He's been here before. He knows the deal. Not to this particular one, but he's talked to us before. And for those of you, I mean, I don't know too many people who haven't met him or haven't heard him, but he's the PIO for Lowell Observatory. And he has just got the coolest job, I think, at the coolest place. And if my wife didn't hate cold weather as much, that's where I'd be. So that'd be a docent up there or something. So Kevin, talk to us, buddy. I'm going to turn it over to you.
It's great to see everybody. Can you hear me okay?
We're gonna try to be quiet so we can hear you.
Yes. Okay.
I've just gone out of screen. It's all up to you, buddy.
Okay. Can I get a thumbs up if you can hear me okay in the audience there?
Yes.
Okay, that's a good sign. I see thumbs in a head, but that's good enough.
Yeah.
Well, it's great to see you. And as Tom said, I've spoken to the group before in the past, and so I appreciate any of you that were here actually coming back and listening again. As Tom said, I'm the public information officer and the historian at Lowell Observatory, and I've been here almost 27 years now. And yeah, tonight, Tom mentioned we're doing a Messier Marathon. I'm going to show you our facilities a little bit later that we're using. It's our open deck observatory and a 14-inch we're using. So tonight we have an on-site program for visitors for a couple hours. And then we've already started, gosh, about 20 minutes ago, and we started our virtual event, and that goes till about 6 in the morning. So if you tune in from midnight till 2 a.m. this morning, I'll be running the YouTube station, so you can send me questions that way. But it's a lot of fun. And with these telescopes, you know, we can pretty easily get all the objects in one night. Last year we did this, and you know, not unusual. There was a little bit of a surge at the end, wondering if we're going to get them all, but we did before daylight set in. And so it's a nice event, and people from around the world can participate. And all you have to do is if you go to Lowell's website, lowell.edu, you'll find a link there, or just go straight to Lowell Observatory YouTube page, and you'll see a link there also. And you can join it, come and go as you want. And it's a nice time to talk about the Messier Marathon, because tonight I was going to talk a little bit about somebody who would have really appreciated Messier Marathons, and that's somebody I think that most everybody's familiar with. Some of you might have met him back in the old days, Robert Burnham Jr. And his story is really fascinating. It's fascinating, it's tragic. I'm still trying to get a clear understanding of his entire life. It's really kind of sketchy in some areas. He's got one surviving relative, and that's a niece that lives in Phoenix. And we've had her up here several times. And in fact, we're going to be creating a display about Robert Burnham that will be opening in a few months. And part of that, we'll probably also do a presentation. And we're looking at doing maybe a panel presentation that'll involve, hopefully, Robert's niece plus some other folks. Bill Sheehan, who many of you know, astronomy historian. And Bill's got a unique perspective because he's a retired psychiatrist. And so he'll be able to shed some light on the story of Robert Burnham, because like I said, it's an interesting story, but it's inspiring, it's tragic, it's a combination of things. So I'm going to talk about Robert Burnham some, and then I'll give an update about what's happening here at Lowell Observatory. And if you have any questions, I think I can see my chat once I start the program, but if not, you can cut in or we can wait till the end. So let me share my screen here. And in theory, you should see a quote. And this quote, I won't have a lot of quotes in here, but I thought this is a good one to start with. The appeal of astronomy is both intellectual and aesthetic. It combines the thrill of exploration and discovery, the fun of sightseeing, and the sheer pleasure of firsthand acquaintance with incredibly wonderful and beautiful things. That's very well written, and it was written by Robert Burnham Jr. And if you have this handbook, which I suspect most of you do, if not, for those in person, it sounds like there's a copy or two sitting around there. This is in, I think it's volume 1, the introduction. I can't remember, but it's a good introduction to talk about Robert Burnham Jr., who was a brilliant person, certainly an introvert. His family has said, his niece said, the family thought he had some sort of psychological issue, perhaps, that they encouraged him to get checked out and he didn't want to. His life is a troubled one, but a successful one, certainly in hindsight. And so I wanted to just talk a little bit about that. Here is his handbook that most of us are familiar with. This is the later edition printed by Dover. Originally, he did this in loose leaf form that I'll talk about in a little bit. So let's just talk about Robert Burnham Jr. a little bit. Talk about him growing up, how he got interested in astronomy, and then kind of the tragedy of his later life. So if we go back to 1931, he was born in Chicago, and he had one sister. This is a picture of him. Most of these pictures I got from his niece, Donna Courtney, who was very kind in sharing these. So he was born in 1931. When he was 9 years old, around 1940, family moved to Prescott, and had sort of a typical childhood, except he was always really interested in science, and he was also very introverted. And so in school, he was nicknamed Mr. Scientist or Mr. Telescope or things like that. He spent most of his waking hours doing science, whether it was building his own telescopes or collecting fossils and rocks. He had a vast collection. He collected coins, old coins like from Roman Empire times. He was just a very inquisitive person. He was a really good artist. He just did mostly spend his time on his own doing things himself, learning how to build telescope mirrors and such, which he did. He did a very good job of it. And so this was his childhood: go to school and spend most of the time in his makeshift laboratory in his room, building telescopes, collecting rocks and fossils and such. In 1949, he graduated from Prescott High School, and he really didn't have a plan of what to do. His parents said, "You're welcome to stay at home as long as you want." But he went into the Air Force, and it seems like the Air Force was perhaps something in some ways good for him because everything for him was straightforward. It was regimented. You knew what to expect. You followed orders. He was in there several years, and there's not much record of how he did in the Air Force, but it seemed like it was a good place for him because there wasn't a lot of uncertainty with it. And he would find that with Lowell Observatory later also. So he joins the Air Force. He's there for several years. When he gets out, he goes back home. Now, this is a picture of him right before he left for the Air Force. Here are his parents and the ever-present telescope, one telescope sitting on the porch. So this is right before he left his home in Prescott for the Air Force. So he got out, came back home, and for several years, he had a couple small odd jobs, but mostly just lived around the house and spent all of his time doing science stuff for fun. He again, continued collecting rocks, built telescopes. You can see he's got a microscope here. He's got all sorts of little bottles of chemicals here. This is one of the drawings that he made of Saturn. This was his life for several years. And so during the daytime, rocks and minerals, at nighttime, a lot of astronomy. And it was at nighttime, and I apologize for the quality of this picture, but this is from a newspaper, and I've not found an original of this. But this is about 1957, and here's Robert, and you might recognize this fellow on the right. That's Barry Goldwater, U.S. Senator, and Robert Burnham had discovered a comet. He was getting pretty proficient at this astronomy thing, discovered a comet, and it went into the local newspaper, in the Prescott paper. And when I say it went into it, it was because his mother was a fairly, I guess you could say maybe pushy in terms of being in the newspaper and trying to have her voice heard and such. She constantly was writing letters to the editor of the newspaper. So when her son discovered a comet, she wanted everybody to know. So she wrote a note in the newspaper. And Barry Goldwater, whose family ties were in Prescott, read this and thought this was a really good thing. And again, when we think about the time, this is 1957. We're around the time, this is just after Sputnik went up, and Barry Goldwater jumped on this. And he thought, what a great story to show that our American kids are on top of things also. They might have Sputnik going up, but here's this kid, self-taught, who discovered a comet. So he went to visit Robert Burnham, and in fact, even gave Robert the family telescope that had been in the Goldwater family for a couple generations. And it's unclear what that telescope is today, but Barry Goldwater, the senator, gave it to Robert Burnham. So what a neat thing. This wasn't the only attention he got. Because it was in the newspaper, there's an astronomer here at Lowell Observatory. His name was Henry Gickless. And Henry Gickless spent his entire career here at the observatory. And in the 1950s, late 1950s, he was just starting a proper motion survey. And this proper motion survey really went back years, you could say, because when Clyde Tombaugh started working here in the late 1920s, searching for Planet X, and that led to the discovery of Pluto in 1930. For another 14 years, Clyde worked here at the observatory and continued photographing the sky, looking for other planetary bodies. And he didn't find any others, but he certainly found a whole bunch of star clusters, galaxies, and other stuff. Well, a couple decades later, Henry Gickless thought, gosh, Clyde took this really great photographic survey of the sky. Let's use that as the first generation for a proper motion survey. Now that we're 2 decades later, let's use the same telescope. And this is Henry Gickless at the guide scope for the 13-inch Pluto telescope, Pluto Discovery Telescope. Henry said, let's rephotograph the sky with the same telescope that Clyde used, and we'll compare the images to the ones he took 20 years ago to the proper motion surveys to look how the stars have changed position over time compared to what we expect them to do. So just as this program is starting, Henry Gickless hears about this kid, I say he was in his 20s, this young man in Prescott who discovered a comet. So he tracked him down and invited him to lunch, and found out that Burnham was really, very knowledgeable about astronomy. So decided to hire him for the proper motion survey. So for the next 20 years, Robert Burnham Jr. Worked here. This is him with one of his colleagues, Norm Thomas, who worked on the proper motion survey also. And this is a blink comparator that they used. It's a more modern version, you could say, than the one Clyde Tombaugh used. And this is a 1950s vintage. We still have this. It's in the floor right below where I'm sitting right now. And so Norm Thomas and Robert Burnham Jr., their typical life was on night times when it was clear and without the moon, they would photograph the sky, rephotograph the sky on 14 by 17 inch glass plates, just like Clyde Tombaugh had done. And then during the daytime, they would put the images on this blink comparator and compare the old plates to the new ones. And that was kind of both their lives. Well, Norm Thomas was raising a family, and when he wasn't working, he was raising the family. Robert Burnham, when he wasn't working, he was working. He was doing his own stuff. That's all he did. I mean, he did like hiking some and getting outdoors, but quite often it was kind of a means to an end to collect rocks and minerals. He lived up on a little shack up here. If you came here 2 years ago, you would have seen this little building. So as you come up to the observatory, you're coming up from the left, you would have passed this building on the left, and then right behind it, a little cabin. And for those of you who know Brian Skiff, after Robert Burnham moved out, Brian Skiff moved in here and he lived in this cabin for a couple decades. And now he lives at another place here. This cabin was actually torn down a year and a half ago because it was a fire hazard and leaking gas and a lot of problems. But this is where Robert Burnham lived for that 2 decades that he was here. So nighttime and work time, he's doing the proper motion survey. Otherwise, he's amassing this amazing collection of minerals. This is inside the cabin. This is above here, one of his comments, this picture. These rocks and minerals, we're not sure what happened to him. He sold some through the years to make some money. Right before they tore the cabin down, I went through all the flower pots and found some minerals in there because there had been a story through the years that he had put some in there. I found some, but none of the real cool ones that you would take to a mineral show. And so he did this. He also did a lot of drawing. There's a lot better than I could do, that's for sure. And then he did one other thing in his spare time. And when you think about doing this in your spare time, I mean, it's mind-boggling. It was in his spare time that he assembled, we know today is the Celestial Handbook. And when you think about that, 2,000-page volume where he covers every of the 88 constellations, this is before our modern computers. So he's doing this all on a typewriter. And the information he collected is remarkable. There's mythology, there's of course science, but he really combined a lot of different things. And that's why this volume, even though a lot of the scientific data is outdated, positions of stars and such, is still such a valuable resource because of all the other information. And it's really fascinating to read through also. And so this is, in addition to everything else, this is what he did in his spare time. He wrote and assembled this, and the first handbooks he created were loose leaf. And so he would print them out, and then there's stories of his niece, in fact, remembers coming up to the observatory, and there's a long room 2 stories below where I am in the basement. And he would set up long tables with these loose leaves, and then get the observatory kids and his niece and anybody else who would want to help. They would line up on tables and assemble and collate these as he sold them. He would assemble them as he sold them. And so it's remarkable. I mean, this could be a full-time job for the rest of your life to do this sort of thing. He was doing this in his spare time. So this is what the original handbook looked like. He later signed a deal with Dover, and by most accounts, he really got the short end of a stick here. He certainly wasn't a business person. He just wanted this guide to be available to people interested in astronomy. It was really a labor of love. And the deal he had with Dover didn't return him nearly as much money he was hoping for. In fact, for the rest of his life, he would constantly be, expecting it to really sell a lot more and him to make a lot of money. He just never did. But on the other hand, Dover taking this over allowed future generations to get this and made it a lot more available. So Burnham assembles this, in his spare time at the observatory. Well, in the late 1970s, the Proper Motion Survey program that ended, and Henry Gickless retired. And this is where one of the murky things with the story, because one angle of the story is that the observatory just fired him, and they could have found him some money somewhere to work on the project. The other side of it is Henry Gickless retired. There was no more money for the Proper Motion, and that was the end of the project. So I don't know, people that were around then don't know the true nature of it, because the director is no longer alive. But for whatever reason, Robert Burnham was no longer working here. And this was really difficult for him, because when he was here at Lowell, he had a regimen. His life was pretty straightforward. He worked on the Proper Motion, that was all known. On the side, he worked on this handbook. He was doing stuff he loved. He wasn't forced to socialize. He didn't have to do anything else if he didn't want to. He did enjoy welcoming guests and would give tours. But it was in a controlled environment. After he left the observatory, his life really, by all accounts, fell apart. And we didn't find out till years later what actually happened to him. For a lot of people in the community, they thought, oh yeah, he's editing Astronomy Magazine and Sky and Telescope, but that was a different Robert Burnham. We're talking about Robert Burnham Jr., no relation to the editor, Robert Burnham. So there's a lot of confusion. People thought he was still in the field, but he wasn't. It wasn't until several years later, in fact, several years after Robert Burnham died, that the rest of his story was kind of pieced together. And that was thanks to Tony Ortega, who back, a decade and a half, 2 decades ago, was working at the Phoenix New Times down in the Valley. And he was also interested in astronomy. And so he contacted Robert's living relatives, who at the time were a sister, who's no longer alive now, but his niece Donna, who's still around. And they told about Robert leaving the observatory, and he just couldn't catch on anywhere. He couldn't get a job. He kept waiting for the big check to come in through the handbook, but he just wasn't able to fit in society very well. He moved in with Donna for a while, or with his sister for a while, but that didn't work out because he wasn't working, and it was really, after a while, it turned into a personal struggle to have, your brother living with you, but he's not working or anything. And so then at one point, Robert disappeared. He apparently had gone hiking. Nobody knew where he went. And they didn't know how to get a hold of him. And his whereabouts remained unknown for a while until Norm Thomas. Now, Norm Thomas was the astronomer that he worked with. Norm Thomas had a son who 1 year was out in California at San Diego. He was walking through Balboa Park, and he saw this guy in Balboa Park that was really raggedy looking. He looked like he was homeless, and he was selling pictures of cats. And this is one of the pictures, one of the paintings. And the young Bruce Thomas looked and said, "Robert, is that you?" He hadn't seen him in years, and it turns out that was Robert Burnham. He ended up moving to San Diego, lived it was a residence that was a hotel, but he paid by the month sort of thing, scraping by financially, and he went to Balboa Park and sold these paintings of cats. And that was the end of his life. He did that for several years, apparently, as Tony Ortega pieced together. And then Robert had congestive heart failure. And in 1993, at the age of 61, he died. And, adding insult to injury, nobody in the family even knew that he died for a couple of years. They didn't even know it. And then when they did find out, and they went to visit his marker, they had misspelled his name. So So talk about dying in anonymity, and the family later corrected it. So this is the marker now. And so it's really been an enigma with Robert Burnham Jr. because, you know, the contribution he made to astronomy it's hard to put a price tag on that because the handbook is just remarkable. And yet the rest of his life is really one of tragedy. It's like this brilliant, I don't know, you go back in time and some people that have really created masterpieces, their personal life, you know, like Vincent van Gogh, his personal life was a tragedy. But Burnham left this legacy that you know should be remembered. And so back, gosh, it's been, I think, more than a decade ago now. Many of you know Tom Palakis and his wife Jennifer. I think many of you probably know them. And they worked together with some astronomy clubs in Phoenix to collect money to create a plaque for Robert Burnham. And this plaque is now sitting on this rock here at the observatory. Here's the dedication of that plaque. Here's Jennifer Palakis. Here's Norman Thomas, Nat White, one of our astronomers who overlapped with Robert. This is Robert's sister, who's no longer alive, Donna, who lives in Phoenix, and then Tony Ortega. And so they came up here and, you know, created this plaque for Robert Burnham. And now, even as we speak, actually 2 years ago, we were working on a display that we want to put inside a Rotunda Museum that celebrates Robert Burnham. And with COVID, we had to put that on hold, but we're now starting to work on that again. So, so later this year, we'll have a little display in the Rotunda that talks a little bit about his life, the handbook. We have this typewriter that he used that Tony donated very kindly. And then we're probably going to do some programming around that also to really explore Robert Burnham and who he was, because we don't want him to be forgotten. It's a story that I'd like to have more clarification on. But however much we know about it, we want to celebrate Robert Burnham because of his amazing contributions to astronomy. So let me just go back there for a second. So that's a introduction to Robert Burnham. I could talk a lot more about him because he's just a fascinating character, and the contributions he made are remarkable. And you know, off and on there's talk about you know, who's going to update the Burnham Celestial Handbook. This Brian Skiff's name has been mentioned, and others, but it really it's a monumental task. I mean, imagine this is just to update it. Imagine what it was like for him to write it. It's really a legendary publication. So I think tonight's a nice night to celebrate Robert Burnham as we move into the Messier Marathon season. And you know, how many people have done Messier marathons have used his handbook? I would say probably a pretty good percentage have. So I think the Messier Marathon in a way is a nice testament to the man who made, you know, helped popularize astronomy. So that's a little bit about Robert Burnham. Now, let me give you an update about what's happening at Lowell Observatory. And I'll just go through a few pictures here, and then I can answer any questions. The observatory through COVID, you know, like everybody else, the ebbs and flows of COVID, survival mentality. We closed our doors to the public on March 13th, 2 years ago. So tomorrow is the 2-year anniversary. And March 13th was Percival Lowell's birthday. And so what a birthday present to our founder that we closed the observatory on his birthday, but that was just the timing of COVID. But we closed to the public. And then for our research, we had to close telescopes for a little bit until we get protocols in place. And then the research came back within a month or two, and that continued in a restricted way. But for our public programs, you know, we like a lot of places, we went to virtual. And we made the most of it because we created a lot of virtual programming that we didn't have time to do before. And so as of just a couple of days ago, we're fully reopened with no restrictions. So people don't have to wear masks, don't have to have proof of vaccination or anything like that. So our staff is, like everybody, I guess, thrilled to be, while we're not through with COVID, certainly we're moving in the right direction. It's nice to be moving forward. So just a little bit about what's happening now. Our prime research telescope, the Lowell Discovery Telescope, and this is a picture of it. It's got a 4.3 meter primary mirror, and the secondary mirror is a 1.5 meters or 2 meters. And this is being used every available night for research, and there are some engineering nights, but it's doing more research than, it's maxed out on research. And just in recent times, a couple projects that it's been associated with, the nearest known asteroid pair, or the youngest known asteroid pair was measured with this, and also some work with the Gerard Van Bell, one of our astronomers, did this massive catalog of almost 200 red dwarf stars that he measured their positions of. So it's being used regularly for a lot of research, from near solar system to quasars and beyond. So our research is thriving. One project I thought would be interesting to mention, some of you may know this fellow, his name is Nick Moskovitz. And as I'm talking to you, Nick is in Gallup, New Mexico, because you see this array of cameras. There's, I don't know, a dozen or maybe a little bit more cameras here. These are all off-the-shelf security cameras. And he's got this box, and this is on top of the building that I'm in right now. And he's got an array like this here at the main campus of the observatory. He's got one out where the Lowell Discovery Telescope is. He's got one at Meteor Crater. He's got one at Prescott. And all these things do at nighttime is just photograph the sky. There's a covering over this, and so it doesn't get covered with snow. But all they do is look at the sky, and whenever there's a bright meteor that might not have burned up, they can go back with these cameras and gather the video that they've collected, and project based on the different angles. They can triangulate and project where a meteorite might have landed, if it did. And they found one meteorite so far from this, and Nick is in Gallup right now, looking for a different one. And I'm actually, tomorrow morning, I'm going to be driving over there, and on Sunday helping the search. There's 20 people or so, and they've narrowed down the projected location of pieces, and we're just going to systematically cover the ground and look for pieces. So it's, you think about this telescope that cost $53 million, and this array of telescopes that combined cost a few $100s. It's amazing the research you can do. It's great to have the Cadillac of telescopes, but you can still do a lot of really neat stuff with the basic inexpensive system. So that's just a sample of some of the research going on. This is what a facility I talked about earlier, and this is where our Messier Marathon is going to be broadcast from tonight. This building is maybe 100 yards from where I'm sitting, and you see this, it kind of looks like a hangar. That whole thing rolls back. So you see a track right here. All these telescopes, there are 6 telescopes in here. All these telescopes are mounted. When we close, this whole building just rolls, covers the telescopes, and you're done. When we open it at night, you roll it back, the telescopes are ready to go. It's really fabulous. This is called the Gio Open Deck Observatory, and this was designed for our expanding public program, because several years ago we got the new Lowell Discovery Telescope, the 5th largest telescope in the continental US, and one of the most powerful and versatile in the world. Well, our public program is now kind of catching up, because on the visitation side, we've outgrown our facilities. We have a visitor center that was built to accommodate 70,000 people a year, and we're getting more than 100,000, or at least pre-COVID. And so you know, rather than having people stand in long lines, and in fact, there's not even enough parking or restrooms for large crowds, what we decided to do is do a multi-stage expansion. Phase one was this open deck observatory that we opened a couple of years ago, right before COVID hit, we opened this. So we never got full use of it before COVID hit. But it's got 6 telescopes in it. And I thought I would just go through the telescopes quickly so you get kind of a feel for what they are. There's a 5.5-inch wide field refractor. And all these are designed to look at different things. So the idea is every night we have a star party. You know, we have these 6 telescopes set up. We have the 24-inch refractor. We have a 16-inch or another 24-inch telescope, sorry, that we just purchased. And so on any given night, we have all these set up, and it's a star party every night. So, and we have this wide field refractor. And this telescope is so cool. It was built kind of as a throwback to the 24-inch refractor, you know, throwback to Victorian times. It's a new telescope. It was built in England, but it has this look of an old refractor, and it's great for looking at planets. And it's one that we're using early on tonight, actually, also for the Messier Marathon. And then we've got some plane waves that have been just spectacular. This 14-inch plane wave is the one that we're going to be using throughout the night this evening to broadcast the Messier Marathon. So everything you see virtually is going to be from this telescope. And then we've got a 17-inch and a 16-inch reflector. And then the largest one is 32-inch, which technically is the largest telescope on site here, diameter-wise larger than 24-inch refractor. I should mention that 2 of these telescopes, the 2 plane waves, the 17 and 14-inch plane waves, they both have video monitors attached to them. The one has also a spectrograph so that we can, you know, we have telescopes that people can look through the eyepieces, because there's nothing like looking through an eyepiece and it's just you and what you're looking at, that connection with the sky. But also these 2 telescopes are attached to monitors so that we can teach, and we can have an astronomer standing at one of the TV screens, looking at one of the things they study on the screen with several people sitting around so they can, you know, explain what they're looking at and teach. And so the telescopes were designed to do different things to accommodate teaching in different ways. In fact, let me go back here. The 8-inch, as well as 2 of the other telescopes, have a mount that raises and lowers as the eyepiece, as the telescope stays focused on an object. And so again, this is designed for public viewing. If we have somebody in a wheelchair, we push a button and the whole mount goes down, but the telescope is still focused on the object. And so it's great for, you know, we don't have to have people climbing ladders as much. It's a lot safer. And again, for people like in wheelchairs, it's very, very practical. So these are things that went into the design of this facility. And I don't know how many of you have seen this, but I'll put out an open invitation to come up, and I'd be glad to show you this to you either as a group, or if you come individually or come with your family, let me know. And I'd be glad to get you some passes and get you in so you can look at these telescopes.
Okay.
So we've got these telescopes for the public. And then this is another plane wave. We just installed last year. This is 24-inch. And we used to have a 16-inch Bowler and Shivens in here that had come from Northwestern University. And it never performed well for the public. It had both hardware and software problems. So this 24-inch plane wave is really, really cool. And it's a nice supplement to the 24-inch refractor. You know, a big telescope and a dome. There's a feel you get when you go in the dome, but it's a lot more versatile because you can get lower on the horizon to things. So these are the things. This is phase 1 of our expansion for the public program. And then phase 2, which is the big project, is this new Astronomy Discovery Center. And construction on this is going on right now. We broke out ground last year, and it's scheduled to be finished in 2024. And this is going to be a 3-story tall building. This is the entrance on one side. So when you walk in on this side, you're on ground level. And so there's going to be a 200-seat theater inside. That's 180 degrees around. The exhibit area is state of the art. To me, one of the neatest things is the roof, because, you know, for years there's been discussion up here in Flagstaff, why don't we get a planetarium? And we've explored that through the years, but the cost of not just building a planetarium, but maintaining it, and the cost of programming, you know, there's pros and cons of it. So our team decided that, you know, since Lowell has been a leader in dark skies protection, the first dark sky ordinance in the world was here in Flagstaff in 1958, related to research telescopes we were putting in. And so our team decided we'll make a planetarium of sorts. It's going to be an open planetarium. So on the roof, we're going to have this area with 150 to a couple hundred seats with an open sky. Associated that will be high-tech equipment where we can project images and such. And so we can look at the real thing, the sky, with the naked eye, and then also look at, you know, images from Hubble and elsewhere, Lowell Discovery Telescope, while we're doing that. And it's going to be, the seats are heated. And so, of course, we get snow up here. And if it's snowing, we're not going to be sitting out there probably, but otherwise, it's not going to be stopped by the cold because of this heated seating. It's going to be a really neat environment, I think. I'll show you what it looks like today. When I say today, this is an hour and a half ago, I took this picture. So if you're familiar with the observatory, here's the Putnam Collection Center. And if you continue going to the left, you get to the visitor center, the current visitor center. So when you get to the observatory in 2024, when this opens, you're not going to go to the parking lot that you do now. Before you get there, you're going to go around to a new driveway that goes around the current visitor center parking lot, around the collection center, and the parking area is in the back here. And then this is the new center. You can see some of the footers and stuff back here going in. So they're starting to go vertical with this. And with the overall mild winter, that allows construction to proceed. So we're really excited about this because, you know, we wanted to expand to allow for larger crowds, but while doing that, also offer state-of-the-art experience. And this is going to really be one of the world's leading centers for doing astronomy education. And, you know, this is something that Lowell is doing, but we consider this, you know, not just for Lowell, not just for Flagstaff, but all of Arizona. And so when this opens, we'll look forward to inviting your group up here to show you this and share the experience with it, because it's going to be a lot of fun, I think. So I could keep talking, and I'm not sure with the technical stuff, if we're on time or not. So I'm going to stop there just for the sake of not inducing any sleep or putting anyone in a coma. But that's a brief introduction to Robert Burnham and then what's happening at Lowell. And I'll be glad to take questions or any discussion about any old thing.
Okay, Kevin, if you want to look into the chat or the Q&A at the bottom, I've got my computer turned around so that everybody can hear you better.
Okay.
Anybody in the crowd here have a question for Kevin?
Yeah.
We got a question.
Are the Braham volumes still in publication?
I think the question was the Burnham volume still in publication?
Correct.
In print? And
Correct.
I'm pretty sure they are. Dover still carries it. I think they are. You'd have to look that up. It seems like. Does anybody know that for sure?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they are. For some reason, when I was looking up the three editions that we had donated to the club, some of them for some reason seem to be out of print, and then some of them are still available. Whether they're just sitting on the shelf waiting to be sold. I don't know. But yeah, I'd have to check it my list again. But I'm pretty sure that there are issues, yes, still for sale.
I know that every time I've tried to buy a set, either for myself or for a friend, I've been able to track them down. But I'm just not sure. Yeah, so that's something we can check on easily, though. And I think what's really neat is if you get a chance to get your hands on some of the original 3-ring bound ones, those are pretty unique. And a lot of them, Robert Burnham signed so many of them as he sent them out. So they're really neat items. I had a set that he had signed and gave them to Ralph Nye, who some of you might know. Ralph was in charge of our telescopes for years, took care of them. And right before he retired, I thought, gosh, he really should have this set. And so I gave those to him. But every once in a while, I still see them for sale on the internet. But those are kind of neat to have those.
Yes, the new improved or the new soft bound ones are interesting. It'd be really cool to see the originals. Yes, I agree. Kevin, did you want to say anything about next Friday's event here in Phoenix? I think you all were hosting a thing on space exploration.
I would love to say something about that, but I'm not actually familiar with what it is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was hoping to go to it, but I got something else going on at the same time. Y'all changed it from a luncheon to an evening thing, so I had to.
I'm not sure. It sounds like a development thing. Our development team periodically does some events where our director Jeff Hall speaks, or I've been involved in a couple of these. And we're still, with COVID, everybody, some people are still working from home, although most are now coming in, and so there's still a few things like that we're not all, completely connected with. So I'm not sure about that.
Turn around.
So that was a great segue for me to brag on what's happening, and I'm not familiar with it. I think because it's a private. It sounds like a fundraising thing, but I'm not sure.
So we have a comment here from. Let's see. Gee, I need my. Bruce says he has a digitized version of all 3 volumes in Microsoft Word format. That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
Makes it easier to read. The three soft bound editions, they're definitely in the old typeface, so it does make reading it a little more awkward. But yeah, they're just so chock full of stuff. It's just like, you could get lost on a desert island and not really care for a long time if you were rescued. As long as
I think it's pretty. It's straightforward what's out of date and what's not. I mean, the stories and mythology and stuff is not going to change, but you wouldn't necessarily use it as a reference guide if you're going to take your telescope out.
Yeah.
But
well,
otherwise,
that's like looking at old versions of. Let's see if we can.
Oh yeah.
This won't.
Hold it back towards you.
Okay, hold it back towards me.
Yeah,
Okay, now everything's out of focus. Okay. Yeah. So cool. Anybody else have any questions? Jack here has a question.
Yeah, his observer handbook, you can always find it on Astromart or Cloudy Nights for sale. It seems to be always on there. I had a question about that, the open frame or the 32-inch
Planewave
scope. Open.
Oh,
the building.
Yeah.
Open.
It's a funny name, the Open Deck Observatory. We could call it GODO.
Yeah, it has the 32-inch F3 in there. How high off the ground is the eyepiece on that?
You have to get in a ladder. You have to get up.
At least.
Average thing is you have to get up a couple steps on the ladder to look through it.
Yeah.
That one's a Dobbs, so it doesn't have the
Very short
mount that goes up and down. And when I came up here earlier, they had it open. Well, that picture I showed earlier, that was taken. I just took that earlier today also. And so
the deck.
yeah.
Oh wow.
And that if you get a chance to come up at night, it's really fascinating because, you know, when the new visitor facilities opened, it's going to look different because the center of the visitor experience is going to be up there, not down where the current visitor center is, but also like the sidewalks to get to the open deck observatory, rather than using lights, they use glow stones. And at nighttime, and our staff put those all in by hand. At nighttime, I mean, you can see the sidewalk really well, but it doesn't interfere with the night vision. And then at a couple junctions of sidewalks, they have kind of a galactic theme to the glow stone. So it's really kind of a unique look to it. And, you know, perfect for preserving the dark skies.
I haven't gotten up there yet, and I've got a whole stack of my membership passes that I don't want to take most of you people. You can get your own damn passes.
Well, I'll invite everybody else to come up except for Tom.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. Well, I know if I go, I have to take my wife. She won't let me go by myself. So, and it's got to be warmer for her.
Yeah. Well, come up here on your own, or if you get a chance to come up, let me know, and I'd be glad to show you around. And because there's a lot of, you know, most of you have probably been up here before, but it's just changing so much. And with the construction of the new visitor facility, you know, really get a feel for how this is going to be. It's going to be like in 1994 when our current visitor center was built, and that really changed the landscape of the observatory. But this is a couple of magnitudes larger than that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting up there. I'm sure most of us are. I'm going to get out of Phoenix, just going up north. Yeah, it's going to be warmer. Yeah. So
this is the time of year when we'd like to go south.
Yeah. Well, as we mentioned earlier, our Messier Marathon is next week, or not next weekend, but the weekend of the 26th, and it should be plenty warm out in the desert. 90 miles west of Phoenix on I-10 Hovatter Road, turn off, across the CAP Canal to the south, hang a right, go on to the Hovatter Road, 1.5 more miles, and you are there. Just saying. Any other questions for Kevin?
What, that long telescope,
the English one
on the pier, yeah, where's that from, and do you know the lens?
Pedigree?
Yeah.
It's a Moonraker. It was made in England. I don't remember the guy's name. One of our educators knew him through the years. I don't remember his name offhand, but I can track it down. But it's the name is Moonraker, and it's an 8-inch refractor.
It's an English brand?
Yeah, it's English.
That's a brand name.
I can look that up and send
From
it to
England.
you guys. I don't remember the person's name. But it was custom made for the observatory. I think the fellow who made it, I think it's not a high production system he has. He makes them on demand.
Now, is your all's facility open? One of the questions we had here, are you all now going to be open year round? You anticipate?
Yep.
Weather pending, or you can just come up to the visitor center if the weather's inclement?
Yeah, we're open. We're open every day except for a few major holidays, and the same with nights. Now, that's like you said, weather permitting. If it's cloudy, we're still open. If it's snowing and hazardous, then we're going to close. But we put notice out, on social media and webpage and try to get the word out. So we had a snowstorm 2 days ago, and they closed it down for the public because our hill up here can be a little treacherous if they don't have cinders down yet.
Yeah,
But generally we're open. We're open every night. We're open every day of the week and every night but Tuesday. And so pretty much anytime you come up, and it really feels a little surreal for me because it's been 2 years since we closed down, and we were completely closed to the public for a while and did just virtual stuff, and then started in person with reservation only, group sizes of 10 from the same family only, and all these formula that everybody else went through. And then in recent times, when we reopened, we still had to have proof of vaccination or wear a mask, which had some political feedback here and there. But now open, no restrictions. And again, like we said, we know we're not past COVID, but we're in a place where we feel comfortable with being able to offer regular programs again. And I think everybody's relieved, although I think our educators have a little bit of a culture shock because we're fully reopened and it comes when spring break is starting, which means big crowds anyways. And so, a lot of people are just busting to get out. And so I think we're gonna have really big crowds. And so
Yeah, I
there's
think you are too.
just a little bit of a
It's so cool.
change from, a dozen or so people here and there to 400 or 500.
Right. Somebody had a question?
How late are those telescopes open?
How late are you all open at night?
The nights we're open, we open until 10.
Till 10. Oh, there's plenty of viewing left after 10. So if you just,
Midnight.
yeah, how about midnight, or just how about, say, if we come up, you just leave.
Now-
your seats and we'll
Now,
take
those are the
photos,
regular
have our
programs,
stuff.
right? Those are our regular programs and our typical visitors or families. So it gets to a certain time, they're done.
Yeah,
But we
they're bored after
also
a while.
offer private telescope viewing, which we often will do later. So we'll have astronomy clubs up, or sometimes families for, birthday present, special groups, schools. And so we will do telescope viewing later for groups like that.
Yeah, we were contemplating about 3 of us coming up and renting for an hour the old telescope,
Yeah.
just because it'd be just so cool to be able to spend time looking through that. So
I can tell you that it's a spectacular experience. I lived up here at Lowell for 15 years. And for a couple of years, the house we lived in was, I don't know, 50 yards from the old Clark Dome. And that was when I was managing the program. So people asked if I had my own telescope and I said, yes, 24-inch refractor. I just walk up my back door and it was great. We'd be done with everything else. And, some of us would stay and just look through the 24-inch, and I would call that a perk of the job.
Yeah,
It was
Yeah.
really spectacular.
it's a treat.
that would be a treat. Okay, any other questions? Does the scope at Happy Jack have any public tours? The Discovery?
We don't have any regular tours. We'll do, so we've taken astronomy clubs out there. It's kind of a reservation only because there's not much parking there. It's on the side of a cinder hill that had been mined.
Mhm.
And so there's the telescope, there's another building where the mirror is recoded every few years. And there's enough parking for a few cars. But there's not facilities to have a lot of people. But I mean, just a couple weeks ago, we hosted our 3rd annual I Heart Pluto Festival,
Mhm.
where we celebrate Pluto's discovery. And we had a panel of speakers, including Don Johanson, who discovered the fossil hominid Lucy in the 1970s. And then one of the leaders of the Lucy mission, named after the fossil, and Clyde Tombaugh's family. So we took them out there at night, and it was the night they were doing engineering. They weren't doing science that night. And we were able to put an eyepiece on the telescope.
Oh, wow.
4.3 meter telescope with an eyepiece.
That's,
It's really cool.
I didn't even know they had a place for an eyepiece on those.
Yeah, they're still, it's not easy to access because it's on this instrument cube that holds 5 different instruments. I mean, 5
Mhm.
really big instruments. And so you have to swap it out with one of the instruments now. But, it's cool to be able to do that. But we also most of the time we can take small groups out there. And we've taken, I don't know, groups of 15 or so, because there's not, up where the telescope is fairly open, but otherwise there's not a lot of space. But that's something we could certainly look at arranging if you're interested.
I imagine we're going to have a wish list now that we're starting to travel. I've only heard 4 or 5 things so far that people want to do. So,
Yeah.
well, I tell you what, Kevin, thank you very much for presenting. And we will be in touch, of course, either in person or as a group. And yeah, most of us hope to get up there just on our own, see the new deck. I don't know how many of the people here have seen the new deck. I know a few people in the club have, and like you say, Tom Palakis, and I think Mike Popri, and I'm not sure who else, but yeah, it's on my list for this year as it warms up. I haven't even been to the canyon in 2 years, so I'm aching to hike, and I hike
The
after.
Grand Canyon Star Party's on.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be cool. Okay, well, thank you very much. We'll let you go. You're in our same time zone, so you can't say that we're keeping you up late. So
No, I have, let's see, I still have 4 hours until I'm going to be helping with the Messier Marathon.
okay, well, take a nap because
Yeah, right.
those are early morning objects are a bitch.
Well, thanks so much. It's great talking with you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Anything else, you guys?
Question.
Yes.
This place is a pretty good place to meet. Does everybody think so?
Yeah. What's your opinion of this? You want to have your next one here too?
Okay.
Okay, then I will.
Technology. There's also an auditorium down this way. It's available to us too.
Okay.
So
Yeah, but it's how much
I don't know.
everything costs. So, and that's why we had to do it so much earlier in the evening.
How much this one cost?
This one costs 125. So, but over at GCU, they were asking for this crazy amount of insurance, which was going to be about $1,000 more a year, which would have made it pretty much say 100 plus the 60 that they were charging. That'd be 160 a meeting. Plus, I hated going to GCU, especially during a game night.
Yeah.
So, and I know that the only thing around here you have to worry about are the peacocks outside.
Yeah.
So, so with that, anybody in the background?
Who paid Glendale Library?
I did. I need to give you the receipt
Oh,
for the bill. It's my money. Yeah, I've been doing it on credit card. Let's
Who will?
see.
Oh, okay. We'll get rid of that.
Okay, get you to unmute there. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Paul, and you have, and Rick, you're unmuted. Anything you want to talk about ATM? You're going to meet, finish off that mirror, Paul?
Yeah, we got to finish the whole telescope.
I didn't know. You may have given up in just in a matter of a week. Rick, anything new? Anything you need for the newsletter? More articles? More participation in the object of the month?
More people to actually read it?
More people to read it. Okay.
Oh, yeah, we all,
Oh,
read,
so many things to read.
we all read it.
Especially the letter from the president. My God, how much better can, okay, how many, never mind.
That's one of the
Yeah.
big reasons.
Okie doke. I didn't see anything in the Q&A from the peanut gallery. So I tell you what, we're going to feed our face here for a little bit and drink the beer and the liquor that people brought. But you people at home, should have been here.
They got it right.
Later on, oh, that's right. You're at home. You had it sitting there. Okie dokie.
We know.
All right.
Okay, we're going to gavel ourselves out of here. Thank you all very much. So we'll set up for next meeting here, but we'll make sure ahead of time that the audio visual works better. 1, 2, 3. Hasta la vista.